Welcome back to the wild, wild world of recruiting. Not the web, just recruiting. That's what Brian Smith knows, recruiting analyst, and increasingly frequent guest here on the show because there's no one better to talk about these things with. So Peyton Falzone was going to Penn State. He was the Nittany Lions guy. And Auburn was a finalist, as I talked about not long ago on the show, for Landon Duckworth, one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the class of 2026. So it's only natural that Auburn would say, forget that Duckworth kid. Let's just go get the guy committed to Penn State. Brian, why is this so wild to you as they've flipped the four-star signal caller from the Nittany Lions?
All of the following falls into the category of, are you kidding me? When does Auburn ever recruit Pennsylvania? Ever? I mean, I don't remember them getting anybody from that state. Plus, this is a kid committed to Penn State, the prominent program in that state. He's been committed multiple months. I live in Auburn. I had not heard anything about it. Zach Blackerby, who runs Locked On Auburn, texted me. He goes, "Did you hear about this?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" When he said who it was, I'm like, "Are you serious?" Nobody in the Auburn beat knew anything about it that I know of. Maybe somebody did last second. There was no smoke. In today's age, for there to be no smoke is almost impossible. And Auburn's got a really, really dedicated group of journalists from major networks. Nothing. So how it happened, I have no idea. I just talked to somebody right before we started this pod. This might be the most random commitment of the last 10 years. Like, there's no way to explain it. They're down to the final two for Duckworth, as you noteworthy said. It's just really important. And he's an in-state kid. Instead, let's just go get the Penn State guy. That makes total sense.
Yeah. Why? I mean, why? Well, perhaps that is, a legitimate battle that they were undergoing with South Carolina for Duckworth services. And maybe they felt like, hey, we think he's going to wind up in South Carolina. We got to go get somebody. I don't know how all these ties began. I'm sure Penn State is a little bit surprised. Our guy Zach Seiko over at Locked On Nittany Lions is probably going, what the heck? What just happened? We had this guy. It was all good.
I had a few texts from him, too. I'll leave it alone on what they were.
Yeah.
It's awkward. Like, this is so weird. Zach and I had actually just finished a podcast. And he'd said Penn State guys don't decommit and don't visit elsewhere. So probably not going to say that again anytime soon.
Yeah. So when a recruitment like this happens, what's your takeaway from Auburn's standpoint? How big is this for Hugh Freeze, who's actually been struggling on the recruiting trail over the last couple of weeks? They've been losing kids left and right, which I think makes this even crazier and even more unexpected. Like, Auburn's trending down. They've got a coach who's on the hot-ish seat, maybe not hot, but like we'll call it a warm seat that he's on. Whereas James Franklin is captain stability up there in Happy Valley, and all of a sudden, amidst the recruiting downturn, Auburn flips a quarterback whose prospects we haven't even talked about yet. I'm sure we'll get to at some point in this segment, but. What do you make of the impact for Auburn? Do you think this could be a catalyst to jumpstart their 2026 efforts back into gear?
It needs to be, because I put it up the other day. They were dead last in the SEC recruiting rankings per on-3. That should never be the case.
No. Oh, my gosh, that should never be the case.
I mean, they're below Vandy, Mississippi State, Kentucky. That's no bueno. So they were 69th, I think, with like 7 commitments. So you get a quarterback, you flip him from Penn State, and now, I mean, they've got several other guys that just were going to make later decisions. They're going to get some commitments in the next 2 weeks, but they still were far below. And Blackerby told me, I did a pod with him a little bit ago. He's like, look, for those that thought that Hugh Freeze was done, this is a sign that he's not, because you're not going to flip that kid unless you convince him you're going to be there. Nobody wants to go to the school and the coach is leaving. I mean, that never is the case. So I would imagine you're looking at a scenario where Auburn might make a little rebound here. That's my guess. How much of one is still to be determined, but they're probably going to get some kids here pretty quick.
Yeah. How often in your experience do kids pay attention to, stuff that you and I or Zach or anybody will talk about? Like, the relative job security of a particular coach. I mean, Billy Napier's been on the hot seat for seemingly over 700 days, which, for those that don't want to do math and are annoyed at me trying to be creative like Brian is, that's just under 2 years. It's felt like he's, always on the way. Then you look at the way of Florida recruits and you go, well, I don't think anyone told those kids over there because clearly they still think he's going to be there. So do you think that was even a consideration for Calzone or for Falzone? Sorry, for Peyton Falzone picking Auburn here?
I'm guessing he just thought that the guy was going to be there because, again, if you think coach is leaving, you're out the door. I have a lot of private conversations with recruits about job security. Publicly, you won't hear them say anything that's noteworthy because they just toe the line. Privately, that is a conversation without any doubt. Now, again, you're not going to find many quotes about that anywhere for good reason, but it matters. And as far as kids committing in a similar fashion, this will probably wake up a few guys because Auburn hadn't done anything here lately. It can't hurt their recruiting efforts with other kids they're recruiting, especially wide receivers and tight ends.
Yeah, so let's talk about Falzone as a player. One of, if not the tallest quarterback in the 2026 class, close to it. 6'4" and a half, 6'5", 200 pounds. What do you see when you watch his film?
This is a kid that I liked a long time ago, but he plays at Nazareth, Pennsylvania, which is not the dominant programs. It's not Penn Hills of the 1990s or something like that in Pittsburgh. This is just kind of a random school. He's very raw, but he's a super athlete. Like, this is the kind of kid that can play flex tight end. This is the kind of kid that you could play as an outside linebacker, but he's got a big arm. He just doesn't have much technique yet. Like, he throws off his back foot. He throws off the run. He's probably better in some senses. I don't understand how this is possible, but he's sometimes better running and throwing than he is setting his feet. Well, that's good long-term to try to go that route, but he's got a big arm. Just got to kind of tinker with the effects of shortening the release and making sure that he's making the proper reads and setting his feet each time. But the physical tools are through the roof, and you can definitely run RPO, which almost every play that Auburn runs is RPO. So with that being said, I'd expect him to fit right in, and he's going to be behind Deuce Knight for a year or two. It's a nice fit while he kind of learns the system and learns how to play quarterback full time.
Do you think Auburn, before this 2026 cycle, had recruited well enough, or has recruited well enough, I should say, to almost buy Hugh Freeze a little bit more time? Because I think that's been a saving grace for Billy Napier, and he's not the first coach to have that. It's like, well, the results aren't great, but he's recruiting well, so we need to give it time. Do you think that this helps move Auburn in that direction of, hey, look at the quarterbacks they have coming down the pipeline? You've got Deuce Knight. Now you've got Falzone in the mix. Like, does it move the needle in your view on that front?
It has to help a little bit. The last two classes for Auburn were really good, and they've gotten a lot better in the trenches, which was sorely needed. And now their receiver group is top 5 in the nation after being really bad when they took over on Auburn's. So that's good, but they need to win more than they did last year. 5 wins is not going to cut it at this place. I can assure you the fans were not happy. Nor should they have been. I think they got to get to 8. And it's not going to be easy. Their schedule is not friendly by any means. They got to go to A&M. They got to go to Oklahoma. Even though they're home games, they play 2 teams you've heard of, Alabama and Georgia, inside of Jordan-Hare.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, that's a tough road to hoe, but Auburn fans are just tired. They're just tired of losing. It's now, blah, blah, blah. So if they don't make it to 8, it's a little iffy. But the recruiting will at least give him some leeway.